Good evening, everybody. As I can see, some of you are the usual suspects, so you know the drill. We'll be waiting for everybody to come in from the waiting room, and we'll get started in 2 or 3 minutes. Welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm seeing some very nice backgrounds.
Not as nice as mine.
That's right. Hey, we feel bad enough, Ben. Come on. Oh, you know, I'm gonna have to start doing these in different rooms because if the same people are coming, they just get to see my blue office all the time. All right,
You have to put the back screen up or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. We've done some staff meetings where I've had like a Halloween background, and I belong to a French group, and I had the Moulin Rouge behind me for that one, so that was kind of
Nice.
fun. But then I find then my head disappears a lot because I move a lot, right? So. As I said, as people are coming in, we're just waiting for people to come in from the waiting room, and we'll give it another couple of minutes before we get started, and then I'll do a brief introduction, and then Ben will start talking about his wines. I actually thought, Ben, that I would start getting earaches with having these earbuds in my ears all day long every day, but so far so good. Touch wood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Touch wood.
Yeah. How are we doing, Anais? How many we got in?
34.
We're 34, yeah. We'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started, and people, the latecomers, can join us. And from what I'm seeing, I don't think I'm going to have to give much instruction about how this works to these people that have joined us. So.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, the waiting room is empty, and people come in. You can add people as they come in, can't you, Anais? So.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Hello again to those of you who are joining us for one of these again. Tonight we're going to New Zealand. In fact, we're already in New Zealand, and Ben has already made Anais and me very jealous about what we see behind him. So we're on Zoom. Most of you will be familiar with this. It's not new to most people now. But we'll ask, we're expecting about 50 people tonight. So if you click on the chat button, when you move your cursor, you'll get a bar at the bottom, and you can click chat, and a chat will come up to the right-hand side of your screen. Some people left, actually, I've found out. And if you want to ask questions, I'll be monitoring that and ask those questions of Ben. Ben Glover is joining us from New Zealand with his Massey Dacta wines, like the one that I'm drinking right now. So, and I always have to say this, sorry to everybody who's heard it before, but in my beautiful Riedel glass that is specific to Pinot Noir, it's got a shape that makes it that much tastier. So I'm enjoying that. And again, we have you all muted. If you'd like to ask any questions or say hello, you can do that in the group chat, and I'll talk to Ben. I did want to talk a little bit about the Massey Dacta. We've written about it, so probably most of you already know, but it refers to a Massey Ferguson tractor that I'll let Ben tell the whole story. But Massey Ferguson is a well-known Canadian brand of tractor that was manufactured in Port Hope and other places in Canada. So it's kind of neat to have that Canadian connection to Ben way down under. Is down under okay, Ben, or are you tired of hearing that? Yeah, that we're okay to say you're down under? And
we're way down under in the South Pacific. We're all good.
Yeah, that's right. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Ben Glover, one of our esteemed producers and winemakers, and I will put it over to you, Ben, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Hey, cheers, Michael, and look, thank you very, very much for everyone jumping into this Zoom, I suppose, webinar. It's a privilege to be here, and as you can see, I've managed to work out to get my computer outside, so I'm giving you a decent view of the countryside as opposed to, say, the inside of my office or something that's not that invigorating. So, look, it's midday for me now, and I'm getting a little bit hungry, so it's good we've got to try these wines, and Michael's just going through all the food matching that they've placed with these Messi Deck wines, which look absolutely brilliant. But before I get onto the wines themselves, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about New Zealand, if you're not already aware, and then how Messi Deck sort of came to being. So Marlborough as a wine producing region is only sort of a generation old. So we're only, first vines went in about the early 70s. And what you see behind me was just all dry arable country. So just sheep, beef and cattle. There was some citrus and some pip fruit in some more fertile areas. And the Wairau Valley itself is probably around 14,000 hectares. I would say now most of that's planted out in grapes. And then going south is the Awatere Valley, which makes up the Marlborough region. And between the two of them is about 28,000 hectares of vines planted. And that makes up about 80% of New Zealand's planted grape area. So certainly Marlborough is a very large piece of and a very important piece of the industry. And within that, obviously, as you know, Sauvignon Blanc is probably the mainstay. So there's probably about 85% of Sauvignon, probably more, planted in Marlborough. But that's not all we do. We also have some wonderful other aromatics, which we'll try today. And also, as Michael's alluded to, some a cheeky Pinot and a pretty smart Chardonnay. So myself, I've been involved in the wine game for probably 25 years now. So early on, I grew up on a dairy farm, and so we're fourth generation dairy farmers in Marlborough. And obviously the tractor of choice back then was a red tractor called a Massey Ferguson. And as a 3-year-old, I couldn't pronounce that. So away from the word go, it was Messi Dacta. So for me and my 3 other siblings, that red tractor on the farm feeding out or mowing or bringing the cows up for milking was the Messi Dacta. So it's just essentially a play on words with the tractor itself, and also just a little bit of an ode or a sort of a,
Homage.
Okay?
An homage.
A homage, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you very much. To growing up in rural New Zealand, but also rural, I think, across the globe, and just how important, I suppose, farming and agriculture is to the mainstay of how we operate these days and where we get our food sources, and agriculture and the importance to that, to the rest of our ripple effect in our industries and that type of thing. So it's still a very important part of what we do. Dairy farming's pretty tough. Was back then, and I think my father, Owen, realised that he didn't want, well, none of his kids wanted to get up at 4 in the morning and milk cows. So he thought he'd better find another vocation. And so in about the mid-80s, he planted grapes, first time planted 20 acres of grapes on our 400-acre dairy farm. And we now run about 150 acres of grape land. Oh, and just quickly, are you acres or hectares?
Hectares in Canada, but we live so close to the US that we know acres very well.
Acres? Yeah. So probably 75, 80 hectares roughly of planted vineyard. And that's off, we've got 2 main vineyards roughly about the same size. So Messi Dacta itself comes off our family farm. So it's estate grown. We don't really bring any fruit in from other growers. We are the growers. And probably from those 80s through to about 2005, we sold our fruit at the farm gate to wine companies. And probably the main wine company that we were involved with was a company called Wither Hills Vineyards. And I was the winemaker there for about 15 years as well. So I sort of grew up on a farm, loved the practical side of farming, My mum's a bit of a thespian, so I think some of that left field and grey matter and thinking creatively with your base product has helped as well with how I approach my winemaking. But I'm certainly no scholar in regards to chemistry or science. So I'm not a bookworm from a scientific point of view. So a lot of what I do is probably touch and practical in regards to the expression off our vineyards. And hopefully, if you've tried the messy deck wines before, which we'll have a bit of a taste soon, they're always about being expressive and being well balanced and harmonious and having some elegance. So they're wines you can drink freely, and it doesn't stop the conversation flow. It actually aids in that conversation, and it aids around your dinner table. And sometimes I find it even makes your friends even nicer, which is extremely important. So Dad we farmed for a long time, and then we've slowly got it into the wine brand game, essentially. Although we still about 40% of our product still goes to Wither Hills as an example. So we're still selling fruit. The old man, we call them cow cockies, so dairy farmers. He's still above the ground, and he's still running the vineyards for us. So it's still very much a family affair. I've got a brother who's involved as well, but he's currently in Australia. He runs quite a large company called Accolade Wines, which from a New Zealand point of view is sort of the Mudhouse brand. I'm not sure if you see that in Canada at all anywhere. So we're certainly within that wine business or wine game in New Zealand. I do a lot of judging. So internationally, last year I went to South Africa and judged there at a wine show. And part of that judging process just allows you to see style differences and understand what people are looking for in wines. So it's essentially a bit of the background from me. I'm one of 4 siblings, and then I don't think I learnt much because I've got 4 kids myself. So they're all 4, aged between 18 and about 12 now, and they're all extremely free range, which is exactly what you need on a farm.
Free labor. Free labor.
That's what I'm hoping. But I think we've been too nice to them, and they're just pushing back. So hopefully they're going to realise, that cash is king, and there's plenty of work down on the farm, particularly this time of year, which is So we're in early summer, obviously, and we're just going through flowering, and basically you see in the background that beautiful clear blue sky. That's exactly what we need for flowering. So vines have a floret, and a bit like a rose bush, the petals go this way, and you've got the stamen and all that in the middle. Grapes actually, it's called a cap. So their flowers sit on top like this, and we need sunny days and a bit of breeze. You can see my hair moving a bit, so those caps fall off, and those little berries, they self-pollinate and grow into grapes. So it's an important time of the year. This next fortnight have blue sky, good sunlight and heat, and a bit of wind. So that's one of our critical times. Another critical time is probably about 6 weeks ago, is our frost season. So we do get frosts. We don't quite get down as what Anise was saying at minus 10 degrees, but we had a pretty significant frost about 6 weeks ago. We were sort of -2, but it stayed at -2 for a good 8 hours. And it did have some effect in the valley floor this year. And then as we roll into our growing season, we normally harvest around March and April. We're normally all done by the last week of April, and depending where you are on the valley floor. So I'll just move my computer so you can just sort of see. This is basically looking down the valley to the east. So that's like the coast, and probably where we are, we're probably 15 kilometres from the coast, or 15, 20 from the coast. So you're looking out towards the Pacific, not that you can see it today. So that way you're heading towards Chile, to be honest. But that's where most of our cooling wind comes from that southeasterly, so up from Antarctica, and it sort of hits this, and it just moderates our climate. So unlike Australia, where you might get 35, 45 degree heat, that cooling easterly, particularly in that last part of the growing season, really just dulls the heat, but we have this lovely blue sky. So it's all about sunlight as opposed to the heat. And that's where we get that lovely acidity from, and that lovely bright aromatics and sort of keen flavours and good tension in the wines. And if you look this way, so that's looking west, and that's looking to our neighbours, the Australians. The great thing is we're actually moving more towards Chile every year by about 3 centimetres, so we're quite happy with that. Further away, across the Tasman, but that's where our warm winds come from. So it's a bit like those Fon winds you get in Vancouver. You know, come over they drop all the rain to get over the hills, and you get those warm winds that come through. And we normally get them around this time of the year. So we get this sort of heat around this time of the year, then it easterly kicks in at the end of our growing season. So reasonably unique valley floor stuff. And I think too, if you look behind me, that's the Wairau Valley, and it's just free draining alluvial soils. So not quite hydroponic, but certainly there's a lot of gravels there. And then as you get further to the coast, it's a bit like any other river delta country or braided river system. You get more and more silt and more fertility and more loam-like characters. So. Is there any questions just around sort of New Zealand and Marlborough itself, or?
Somebody's actually asked what a mudhouse wine is. You actually said that. Yeah.
Yeah, Mudhouse is a brand. I was just trying to link it to what my brother's currently doing.
So not the same as Plonk, is it? Is it like just an everyday drinker? Is it bulk wine or no?
Oh no, it's not bulk. No, it's a branded product. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so I thought, shall we look? We'll look at some wines now. So we've got 4 wines to look at, and we'll start with Sauvignon Blanc. So this is the 2020, just been bottled, and I think the aim is to get this onto a pallet, into a ship around I think January to see you guys 2 or 3 months later. So good label, nice and bright. Screw cap, I've been sort of told to sort of mention that a little bit, but really screw caps are just designed to get access to the wine quickly. You just have to twist the bottle and off it comes. And particularly with aromatic wines, we've found over the last 20 years when we first started doing them in 2001, they just hold the freshness, and you see the invigoration and brightness in the wine. So really lovely colour, nice bright, so that sort of pale green.
You seem to be fading out when you go a little bit to your left. Yeah, that's much better.
Is that better?
That is much better. Thank you.
All right. So nice greens, a little bit tinge of yellow, but still nice and green and bright. So normally when you're looking at Sauvignon, you think blue sky, green grass, the odd sheep, some mountains in the background in New Zealand. Got a bit of a travel bubble at the moment, so this is the closest you're going to get to it, probably for the next 12 months, I'd imagine. The way things are, the way we're looking at that thing that we do not mention for the next 25 minutes. So,
right.
But really lovely bright greens. It's sort of a savoury green character. I don't like too much overripe fruit notes like passion fruit and grapefruit or red grapefruit. I like to see some greens and some of those ripe herbal sort of characters. So you're looking at sort of jalapeno, tomato leaf, so that red-green character that you get. So if you pick a tomato up in your hand and then put it down and smell your hand, it's sort of a red-green herbal ripe smell. So if we can capture that, I think we're home and hosed. And then on top of that, you'll have some melon and guava characters. So rock melon and cantaloupe characters, and that's probably as ripe as we probably get, or that I see in the style of wines of Sauvignon Blanc that I'm looking to make. And then on the palate, it's just got to have lovely acidity, and it shouldn't be sharp or edgy. It should be rounded, so it's a bit like a carpenter with some sandpaper. You're just rounding those edges off, but it still delivers really lovely drive through the palate, and it doesn't fall sideways off your palate. So it's invigorating and fresh. Beautiful with seafood, fresh seafood, even salads. even actually melon wrapped in prosciutto. That's actually quite an intriguing match with Sauvignon Blanc.
Now you're making me hungry.
Perfect.
Yeah. So somebody's asking about the winds from Australia. Did the wildfires affect your grapes at all?
Not a direct impact, as in, smoke taint or that type of thing, but certainly we saw the haze, that red haze across if we look to our west, as those wildfires were occurring. And there was some thought that, will this have an impact? I don't think we've seen a significant impact environmental, in regards to ripening and flowering and that type of thing. So I can say, yes, we saw it, but no real impact on the fruit and the ripening and growing of our fruit.
Yeah, and certainly no smoke taint when it's that far away, right? Because it's dissipated by the time it reaches you.
Yeah. So our two vineyards are quite coastal, actually, so we tend to get a bit of sort of savouriness or umami characters on the palate. So we're not all about just total primariness. I'd like to see a little bit more going on in the palate too. So often people talk about minerality and texture and that type of thing. I think we're close to the coast, so we see a bit of saltiness, and that's when I talk about that savouriness coming up. And it's an old dairy farming analogy, but it sort of makes you chew your cud. Even when you've finished swallowing the wine, there's still a sensation, and it still delivers nice presence even afterwards, and hence works well with foods.
Excellent. And what do you think about cellaring whites? I mean, again, the screw cap comes into it. Jane has given this a 21-22 drinking window, so fairly young. She does like her wines young, so this will probably go a little longer in the cellar than that, but not necessary, right?
No, they're designed to be, I suppose, drunk ready, as opposed to drunk now. So they're ready to drink. I always find, I mean, the way you're running your New Zealand program is pretty good, because I always find that the 2020 Sauvignon looks better after Christmas. So it's given it some time to just relax a little bit. If you think about a young precocious child, it's exactly what Sauvignon Blanc is. It's all arms and legs. It's all young, or it's like a young giraffe. Doesn't quite know how to walk properly, and you give it 6 months and it's got it sorted. So I think that February through to into your summer is a perfect time to drink New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, because it's had that 6 months of either relaxing in tank and or in bottle before you've received it and opened it, and it just softens. I think my wines, they can last well and maintain the freshness, if that's what you're looking for in Sauvignon Blanc, probably for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And then they change, and they sort of change a bit like a Hunter Semillon. They go toasty, which is I quite like seeing.
So, and you may not know this, Ben, but this was one of my picks. It's a new thing in our catalogs where we do our own picks, both Greg and myself, as well as obviously Jane does her coup de coeur, and the Sauvignon Blanc. I've been asked what I liked about this wine in particular, and the thing I like about your Sauvignon Blancs, very much what you've described. So I'm not cheating in that it's really true that I really like that acidity, and I love the way you put it, was that it does. I don't like an acidity that has this really, really sharp edge. I like something acidic, but I do like it kind of softened on the edges, if that makes any sense. It sounds pretentious, but I think that when you take some wine training, you start to learn the difference of those things, and a well-made wine compared to one that just has acid for acid's sake.
Yeah.
And Mark, the one who's asked about this on the chat, I'd say to you, Mark, that I love acidic foods as well. I'm a bit of a home cook, and so acid loves acid when you're doing food and wine pairings. So I love the acidity of the Sauvignon Blancs with the acidic foods that I cook. So that kind of makes sense. So thanks, Ben. You can go ahead.
Yeah, no, like I totally agree with that. And I think the way we're eating foods and preparing foods over the last 20 years have changed too. So we're into brighter, fresher, cleaner, more simpler flavours. And that's Sauvignon Blanc, really. So if I can get that fruit flavour through the palate with that acidity, it's just extremely harmonious with those type of style of foods or flavours.
Yeah. Excellent. And I know what bottle's coming next, but they don't, so I'm pretty excited. That bottle you showed.
Well, I was going to do the Pinot Gris. Is that all right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah?
Absolutely. And again, it's the shape of the bottle that I think is quite remarkable.
This is our new NPD project. What do you reckon?
Perfect.
So these other three wines we're going to look at, yeah, this is a sample bottle from the winery, because the other three wines we haven't bottled yet. So they'll be bottled late December, early January, and then be shipped across to all you fine imbibers of Massey Dacta. So this is the Pinot Gris. It's finished. It's ready to bottle. So it's nice and bright still, and we're just essentially waiting for our bottling date.
And this is one of the gorgeous things about being an Opinion member, is that we get to see this wine before it's even reached the bottle. I just absolutely love that. Thank you, Ben.
That's right. So I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's just a little bit yellower than the Sauvignon. Not so much, but Pinot Gris for me is all about having flavours of Bosch pear, which is the brown skin pear, crunchy red apple, sort of Braeburn. So there's a bit of crunch, or golden delicious. So there's a bit of crunch and a bit of juiciness on the palate. And then also rolling in that sort of strudel or apple crumble sort of winter dessert characters. So you've sort of got the spice and or five spice almost sitting in there as it rolls through the palate. Pinot Gris doesn't have acidity, really. So you're really relying on the unctuousness of the flavour and the skins and the pulp and the juice and how we manufacture the wine through the fermentation phase. So for me, I'm not looking for a flabby wine. So flabby, I mean, when you drink it, it falls sideways off your tongue. It should still drive down the palate. Gris sometimes can be a bit sweet and sour, so there's a real challenge in regards to picking it ripe but not overripe, and picking it ripe but not necessarily having a whole lot of alcohol once you ferment the wine through. So it's all about what they call physiological or phenological ripeness, which just means the bunch and the berries and the seeds are ripe, and that's what gives you the structure. So this is off our Alice Mills vineyard, so it's essentially a single vineyard wine, and we've probably got 2 or 3 hectares of Pinot Gris, so about 6 or 7 acres of Pinot Gris. And often it's quite a good wine because it doesn't have acidity. It's actually quite a good wine to start with. So it actually it just softens your palate up a little bit. Is first wine of the evening for your sundowner, that type of thing. And then
or
the
just
wine
before lunch, right?
Yeah. 11's is, yeah. It's still a dry style. I'm not into hugely sweet wines, so I want to see some dryness through the palate, but it certainly has some unctuousness to it. So unctuousness, which I mean is not sweet, but it has a richness and a roundness to it in the body. I think food-wise, I think on the catalogue they talk about, is it salmon?
No, this is the moule frites, so the mussels.
Oh, the mussels with the creme fraiche.
Yes.
Yeah. Exquisite.
That's a great pairing for this guy.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting that creme fraiche, because I've also paired it with sort of a salmon on its skin, whether it's slightly smoked, and then noodles with like coconut cream, or like a light coconut cream base, and that seems to really marry in with what the Pinot Gris delivers as well. Just a softness and richness to the whole flavour spectrum.
And it talks, Jane talks about it being, some of it is in old French oak and some of it's in tank, and then you blend.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. Winemaking, yes. So there's about 10% I put into old French oak. And I feel if you don't do that, the Gris is just a bit bony. It's just missing something. So it's a bit like that giraffe I was talking about with the Sauvignon. You put a little bit of an old oak and it just provides texture and a bit of weight in it, and it just fills out the body a little bit. And it just provides a bit more mid-palate flavour and feel. But you don't lose the vibrancy of that lovely sort of pear and crunchy apple.
And I think, and people who are afraid of oak, like when they don't like oaky Chardonnays and things, don't have to worry about that in the Gris here, do they? With that.
No, look, if you can pick up, yeah. So the barrels are over 10 years old. So essentially they're a round wooden vessel, which a barrel's lying on its side, as opposed to a stainless steel tank. And the whole kinetics and the regime of what the yeast is doing as it's fermenting is totally different from a tank to a barrel. And you've got more surface area where the lees sits along the bottom of the barrel. So you're actually just creating more texture. So you shouldn't be seeing any oak flavour.
Yeah,
or oakiness. Yeah. And it's only around 5% of the blend. So of the wine, I've got about 4 to 6 barrels that I use every year. Yeah. And that's all it's doing, just providing a bit of mid-palate. So.
Excellent. Have I got?
But it's certainly the go-to wine.
Yeah. No questions on that one, Ben.
No? All good.
They must be waiting for the Chard.
I think they must be. Do they like oak?
Yeah, that's right.
So the Chard, you can see compared to the Gris.
Wow.
All right, you can't even see through the Chardonnay. So this has been cold stabilised at the moment. So I've pulled it out of barrel about 3 weeks ago. So it's gone through 100% barrel fermentation. It's been pulled out of barrel, and we're just getting it stabilised and cleaned up for bottling. I've got it down for mid-December. And then so it'll be cleaned up and filtered into the bottle then. So this is what you call what I call a nude sample. So nothing's essentially been done with it. It's just been taken out of barrel.
And just before you go on to that, Ben, I've got a question about the Gris after all. How many bottles do you make of that, of the Pinot Gris?
Of the Pinot Gris?
Yeah.
I do about 2,500 litres. So that's about...
divide by 4 times 3.
300 dozen?
Right, yeah. I think so. I'll trust you.
Yeah. So it's just a small, it's a small parcel for you guys. Yeah. Yeah.
No, for sure.
And the Chardonnay is the same, really. So this is off our Kersley Estate vineyard, which is about 3 miles from the high tide mark. Lovely silt loam, and it tends to give lovely sort of grapefruit, citrus, pithy notes on the nose. A little bit of spicy oak on the nose, but to the query about the oak before, I think if you can see it on the palate, I don't think I've done my job properly. So I'm more around using that lovely acidity, like we were talking about with the Sauvignon and the Gris, to drive the palate, and then that lovely savouriness that rolls in. So there's probably only about 10% new oak that I use in my Chardonnay for that reason. So those that like big buttery Chardonnays, this probably isn't the Chardonnay for you, but those that like lovely sort of citrus and vibrancy and that type of thing, and a bit of flintiness and a bit of funkiness, this is probably the one.
So you were saying not too buttery, or like it does go through malolactic, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah, okay. But I don't necessarily promote the big buttery richness. I still want to see some stuff off the vineyard. So again, sort of more citrus, grapefruit. Sometimes a bit of white peach pops in there, but that's about as far as it goes from a Chardonnay spectrum point of view. So roughly, you could argue it's not Meursault-like or esque. It's more Chablis-esque.
Oh, okay.
Is that an easier
Yeah, I think people can relate to the Chablis thing, but and you know it's the old joke. I don't like Chardonnay, but I like Chablis, right?
Yeah.
That's where Chablis is Chardonnay for those of you who may not know.
Sorry.
Um,
Yes. Correct.
and I've also just been asked what malolactic fermentation is. Do you want to take that one, Ben?
Yeah, I can. Yep. So, but we're talking about acid, which is a pretty important part of the winemaking process and really good for structure. But essentially, a bunch of grapes or wine has about 3 main acids in it. Tartaric acid, which is the main one. Then you've got 2 others. One's malic acid, which is basically like biting into a Granny Smith apple. It's that sort of pert, tart acid piece, and it can make you, if it's really bad, it can make your eyes water. And then that malic acid, there's a bacteria which is good for you, which can convert that malic acid into lactic acid. So lactic acid is your milk acid. And that's why people talk about creamy, buttery Chardonnay. Because what they've done is they've converted the Granny Smith green apple acid, and they've used this bug and they've moved it across into a lactic acid character. And it's all about how you handle that transition across acids, and what type of bacteria you're using, or whether you're doing it naturally, will determine how buttery that wine could or can be.
And I think that'll answer Colette's question about whether you're using wild ferment or are you using cultured yeasts.
Yeah.
So I'm wild.
Wild yeasts for that, for the alcoholic fermentation, and also we're in an old winery which we bought a couple of years ago, so it's got natural malolactic bacteria just hanging around in the rafters. So we don't add any malo bug either, so it's all natural.
Excellent.
And it goes through nice and clean. It's actually quite a nice little bug to have.
Yeah, that's right. And Neil's telling us that he's drinking the 18 Chard right now, and he's loving it.
Hey, awesome. Yeah, that was a pretty 18 was a bloody tough vintage, to be honest. It rained, but the Chardonnay seemed to really do well. So the Chardonnay we've seen out of 18 has been great. I think from a vintage point of view, 19 and 20 are probably 2 exceptional vintages we've had back to back. So you're in good hands from a climate and a vintage point of view, these next 2 vintages.
Excellent.
Yeah, so just lovely and bright, good citrus, good grapefruit, a little bit of spice from some oak. And then I'm just looking for lovely refinement through the palate. And hopefully you'll see all my wines, so they're not there to beat you up like you've been in a ring with Mike Tyson. The flavours and the profiles are just elegant and succulent, and they just tread lightly on your palate. So often I find if the wines are too big and aggressive, you can only handle a glass or 2, and you sort of think, oh, what's next? So my aim is you go to the bottle and it's empty, and you go, where the hell did that go? So, and to do that, you've got to have flavour and ripeness and elegance, but it just treads lightly on your tongue as it goes along, a nice length. So that's the aim for me.
And I bet no one's asking, but I'm going to ask because I think people would love to hear what that's going to go through to make that a clear wine. What steps? Like you told me, it's cold stabilized now, so that's got things in suspension, and then you'll take it from there, right?
Yep. So that's been racked out a barrel. So that'll have yeast in it. It'll have that bacteria in it. It's had sulfur added. So that's why it's sort of still looking, it's cloudy, but it's sort of looking sort of green-ish. So sulfur is a preservative. It's in all your foods, all your canned foods. It's in everything. So it's a pretty standard food industry ingredient to look after what we put down our mouths. And then to get it to this phase, which was that Pinot Gris, but it's similar. It'll go through a filter called Crossflow, and it's a gentle filter that just takes out all what we just call all the solids, all those hot, bigger molecular weighted solids in the wine, and then it'll get to a what we call bottle bright. And essentially these days, the way people are drinking is you need to deliver a nice bright glass of wine to the drinker. Anything sort of untoward or cloudy or funny is a bit of pushback. So it's a bit like, you'd you're going to buy a shiny red apple rather than one that looks a little bit warty, let's say. So we've got to deliver a good presentation in the glass and in the bottle.
And Nikki's asking if that filtration will strip out any flavors.
Yeah, good question. I don't believe it does. You'll hear of a lot of people that we'll probably we could have a good argument about. I think it knocks the wine. So that old adage of bottle shock, putting a wine into bottle, that's from filtration and moving the wines around, and they do go into a bottle shock, and they just go into a dip, so they lose a little bit of nose, they just go a bit shy, but they come back. So we just find 2 to 4 weeks, and they're sort of back to where they were prior to being filtered and bottled. And as long as you don't hurry the wine.
Yeah, and in that process, are you using fining agents or and filters, or both?
Only if I need to or have to, yeah.
Yeah, if it's really cloudy, right? Sometimes you need to drop some of it to the bottom with the fining agents.
And then and then some of the fining agents, all they do is they just polish. So they're a bit like that reference to the carpenter with the sandpaper. All they do is just polish the wine, so they just make it a little bit finer. So if you've got a bit too much grip, which is a bit like when you leave your tea bag in your cup for too long and it's quite tannic, you can use, say, egg white, and it just polishes that tannin or that grip a little bit more for you.
Great.
Okay, the Pinot Noir, we're ready for the Pinot.
Yeah, yes, and it's going to look like this, everybody. and people are probably asking why I'm drinking this one tonight when the Sauvignon Blanc was on my picks, and that's because all the Sauv Blanc is gone. so I didn't have it to taste tonight. I've drank it all.
Perfect. There you go. It's a good endorsement. So Pinot Noir, this will get a filter as well, so you can't really see through it. So all it'll do is just create a little bit of brightness and a bit more clarity on the wine. So Pinot for me should make you dance. If you want a cigar and you want to go and sit in the corner, have a Cabernet. Pinot's invigorating, and I think the food match is a good example of this. Lovely bright foods. It doesn't have to be with gamey foods. And even my Massey d'Acta Pinot, often I refer to it as the Monday to Thursday Pinot, and you can have it with pizza. Dirty pizza, or a puttanesca, tomato base and green olives and capers, pastas and stuff like that. So it works a treat with those more simple, village foods. Very, very, very easy to rustle up at home. So Pinot out of Marlborough in particular, it's not necessarily on the valley floor, which you see behind me. It's sort of up in the hills. There's a bit more clay. And that just a bit more guts around its root zone, provides a bit more richness in the palate. And Marlborough Pinot is it's all around the cherry space. So it could be spicy cherry, brooding cherry, brambly cherry, Morello cherry, but it sits around there. It doesn't go too far. You may get a bit of plumminess, but not too much. So it is that bright sort of cherry character. And then again, Marlborough, the acidity is the beautiful thing here in Marlborough, and you can drive lovely acidity and good, nice oak spice through the palate. So very easy drinking, but not simple drinking. I think there's a good distinction there. There's still nice texture and vibrancy.
I would concur. And I did want to say that Jane's tasting notes has something called Ribena in the tasting notes, and some people may not be familiar with that. That's a British drink. That's a black currant. So she's saying there's some black currant on the palate. That one. Oh no, on the nose. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Ribena. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get that. So it's sort of that. It's sort of like Anise, is it Sous-Bois? Sous-Bois, which is sort of fresh forest floor and brambly raspberries and brambly blackberries.
Sous-Bois.
Sous-bois?
Oui.
Oui?
Yeah.
Oui.
Your French is excellent, Ben.
Hey, only 2 words at a time, though.
There you are.
Yeah. So it's that, like you say, it's sort of wild cherries and perhaps cherry blossom and cherry leaf. So it's not just about the fruit. And that's what Ribena is, that sort of, brambly blackcurrant sort of characters. So those 4 wines are probably pretty true to what the Marlborough district does pretty well. We tend to have a lovely aromatic space to us. So the wines are always lovely and aromatic based around their varietal expression.
Yeah, and Lisa's asking if this would pair with a roast turkey. And I would say it's light enough. It's certainly not going to overpower the turkey. And it depends on what you're going to put with that roast turkey. Like actually, if you have some cranberry with that, then it would marry very nicely with this, wouldn't it, Ben?
Yeah. A bit of cranberry would be beautiful with that, and even a bit of stuffing with that turkey. So some of those herbs and stuff,
yeah.
Those fresh sort of green oregano and sage and stuff, and thyme. They just sit nicely there too with that cranberry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even beurre blanc with your potatoes, it's really smart.
And in our catalog, we've got it with grilled salmon with the Ribena and Dijon glaze. So it's got the again that berry. I agree. And I'll make a confession as well that when I'm finished here, I'm going to be having this tonight with something called chicken cheese and biscuits, which is chicken and sage and melted smoky cheese. So I'm really looking forward to that. Now I'm getting
that's
hungry.
awesome.
Yeah. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
I won't have to open another bottle. I can keep on this one.
Brilliant. Yeah. Look, Pinot Noir is pretty versatile, really. I mean, even in it'll get hot there. This type of Pinot, look, don't tell anyone, but put an ice cube in it or chill it for 10 minutes.
Okay, we're hanging up now.
All right.
No, I'm kidding.
No, it's a bit blasphemous, but if you chill, the Ribena comment, it's a light, but it's got good poise wine. So if it's a hot day, 10 minutes in the fridge, it goes perfectly. And even with that salmon you didn't eat last night, all of it, cold smoked salmon or cold grilled salmon salad with a slightly chilled Pinot is awesome.
I'll forgive you.
Just challenging you.
Yes, that's right. And any other questions for Ben? It's awfully beautiful out there. Are you at your home or at the vineyard, or are they the same place? The home and your home and vineyard?
No, this is I'm at the winery and vineyard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anything else? Anything you want to ask him?
And what's the temperature there? Carol and Dean are asking.
I'm just in a t-shirt and shorts, so I reckon it's warming up to about 22, 24 degrees. We don't often go over 26, 27.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't get uber hot.
Right. Well, with COVID, I think I could probably operate Opimian from over there. That sure beats -10.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quite right.
Right. Well,
and I think it's good to be able to do this too, to be honest. To be able to connect and talk through Zoom, it's great.
Yeah, it's fabulous, and these are becoming so popular, and we so much appreciate your taking the time to do this in your midday, and it's really cool because here I can say good afternoon, good evening, and I don't think anybody good morning here. But we have people from coast to coast on the call, all the way from Newfoundland all the way over to BC. Ben was telling us before the call that he's been to Canada, and why don't you tell them where you've been, Ben?
Over the many years, I've gone into the Okanagan a couple of times, so into Vancouver, and then across to Niagara, the peninsula, in Alberta. I've been up to, is it Banff? Just for one night only, but more wine work as opposed to fun. So I need to go for fun next time,
Yeah.
bit of
Aren't they the same
relaxation.
thing? Wine, work, and fun. I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, it's a beautiful country.
Yeah, and Mark's asking what
Where
we
you
sell
guys
the
are?
most of, and I believe it is the Sauv Blanc. I know that the Pinot Noir is a very close second. So, oh, and somebody says
Yeah.
Jasper's better than Banff, so you're gonna have to do that next time.
All right. Okay.
Right.
Send me the invite.
Yeah. And cases per year that you produce from your place? Have you got that
From the
number?
actual vineyard.
Yeah, usually go from with bottles, right? Because cases can be 6s or 12s, and
Yeah, I normally talk dozens. So, look, it's probably a 50,000 case vineyard or 100,000 case 6-packs.
right.
But that's not all Messi Decta. So, Messi Decta, I go into the US with it. So there's probably about 7,000 cases
Right.
that I'm currently doing under the Messi Decta brand.
And we are privileged
So it's
to
small,
have it, and we thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Awesome to be part of it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to thank Anais for running the show here. She's always doing a great job. Really appreciate it. Thank you everybody for having joined us, and I'm certainly enjoying these more and more. So thanks for doing that. And Ben, have a great rest of your day. Go and have something to eat with those 4 wines you've got open now there.
Don't you worry.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Good night, everybody.
Hey, look
Good
forward to it.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you,
good
Ben.
morning to
Cheers,
you.
everyone.
So much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.